Hello, welcome to the Human Frequency Project Monsoon special. We just got back from probably the most amazing gifting trip yet. It's kind of hard to say because the whole process has been amazing for the past 7 years, but this is one that's been in the works for a while. I've wanted to do it for some time. We went to Arizona and we towerbusted Phoenix, which was a dream of mine. Anybody who's read my book and gotten through to the end would know that my future hope was to gift in Arizona, particularly in the Phoenix area, because we have a rain problem in the summer, which is that California does not have rain in the summer. We've just never had it. And I started to think over years of doing this work and looking at weather patterns, maybe that's not natural because we don't really know what's natural. Maybe we are meant to have a summer monsoon like the desert does. I mean, why not?
Well, our first hint of this was 3 years ago when we were coming back from New Mexico and went through the city of Phoenix, and we noticed that all of the freeways were covered in concrete, and there were plants, but they were very sparse and they were manicured, so it was not conducive to gifting at all. We prefer to just gift on freeways and throw into whatever vegetation there is, but the way it was done there in Phoenix, it was impossible to do. You'd have to get off the freeway and do all the roads, and we said to each other, we're gonna have to come back here and do this sometime, and this was that time.
Yeah, and I mean, even if we were able to gift the freeways back in 2018, we would have still needed to come back to do the city on the ground, because we initially do an area by doing these wide sweeping gestures like freeways, and then we go in deeper. So usually day one in a city would involve driving on the freeways and throwing everywhere and keeping track of where we went. And then the next day we would, if we hadn't already exhausted all the freeways, we would do more of that. But if we'd already used them, that's when we go down on major streets and start doing those gestures. There have been some cities where we've done the entire city, like Fresno, Oxnard, Camarillo and Ventura. We did all those entirely. San Diego, there's examples of places where we left no stone unturned. But in larger cities like Seattle, we weren't able to do the entire city. In Las Vegas back in 2017, we weren't able to do the whole thing. And likewise in Phoenix, we couldn't. However, we took the wide sweeping gesture approach. Since we couldn't do freeways at all, we just started on major streets there. But there was a whole trip leading up to that as well. We took care of new freeways on the way we hadn't done. And we went into the desert of the southeast part of California, the Sahara of North America.
So just over a year after your book came out, we decided that this was, well, we didn't really decide. We just intuitively knew that this was the time. Of course, June is not the most ideal time to gift in the desert, but it was just the time to do it, and we'll get to why in a moment, but just really, really quick. First, I would like to thank all of the donors who made this gifting possible. I would like to thank everyone who has supported our gifting work over the years, be it in small gestures or large gestures. There are many. This gifting would not have been possible without you, and I believe by your estimate, we are approaching the 7,000 Towerbusters gifted mark. It's impossible to know, of course, how many. This is an approximation based upon our work, but 7,000 in 7 years' time, that to me is a lot, I think.
It is a lot, and we've actually become more efficient with it. So in the last few years, we've been able to cover more and more ground and do double bustings and triple bustings, which is when you find a cluster of towers. Instead of putting one tower buster per each tower, you actually can put one for 2 or 3 towers, because we're really doing a counter grid. That's what this is all about. Is there's this dark control grid over the world. It's basically a weather control grid. I mean, there's mind control involved, of course, too, but our focus here is to combat desert development and drought abatement and cleaning the air and stuff like that. So we're able to actually show that that works, and I'm very excited about the results of Project Monsoon already. But what we've been doing is trying to get more than one tower with one tower buster, which we didn't do at the beginning, and it makes the work faster and more efficient and more effective. So we actually covered a ton of ground in Arizona in addition to Phoenix. And this time we did it a little different.
Yes, this was a brand new approach to gifting. We did something we've never done before, because in the past we would plan things out. We would look certain things up online ahead of time.
Like everything.
Yeah.
Lodging, where's the Whole Foods compared to the lodging? You know, that kind of stuff.
All the important stuff. But this time, none of it. We gave absolutely no warning to the parasites, effectively, about what we were doing, what our plans were, and as a result, I do think that changed not just the impact of the gifting itself, but how we were able to function in Phoenix without that digital imprint on the record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also call that a silicon footprint now.
Yeah.
And we can save the world by reducing our silicon footprint. We need to get off of the media, stop telling the parasites everything we're doing. So in this case, we did something totally different, and we tried this once already in Santa Maria, which we went to back in April. And that one we didn't give any notice. We didn't tell anyone we were doing it because everyone is a recording device. Everyone's carrying the energy weapon, the tracking device that records everything and sends it straight to the AI. So we didn't tell anyone about that, nor did we look up anything in advance. And that was successful, but it was only one day.
And it was very close to home, too.
Right. And what was a little scary for me about this one was not telling anyone we were leaving. Was frightening. Leaving our house and, you know, doing self-watering for the plants with upside-down bottles because I didn't want to tell anyone we were doing it. Knowing that our horse, is boarded somewhere, and we weren't able to tell them, but at least he was in good hands. Should they not be able to reach me, they would have been able to help him if something happened. So it was nerve-wracking to me, and also to not have the phone on ever. So I would normally check the cell phone maybe once a day in the evening while we're traveling. We would turn on the computer in the evening and check our email and manage our business, but we weren't able to do any of that for the whole time pretty much until the very end. So this is nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
We also didn't have any hotels reserved. We didn't know where we were going to stay. Everything was completely just going out into the wilderness with a paper map, not knowing what was going to happen. And yeah, it was scary, and I don't know many people who wouldn't be afraid to do it. But, you know, I used to do this 25 years ago. I would go places with no plan, and it turned out to be fine. Everything was fine.
Well, we stuck with it.
Yeah,
and this, I do feel, in hindsight, was part of the whole experience, was having that faith and trust that everything would be fine, that we would be guided in the right direction and steered away from trouble. And we did receive several signs during the trip that we were on the right track.
And we received everything we needed.
Yeah, it's too much to get into what it actually was, but we definitely had that feeling for the duration of the trip.
I actually also had this new feeling inside of weightlessness and not being tied to the world. It felt like I was in a dream, not having the technology. And I acknowledge I'm a tech addict. We did an episode about this a couple years ago when our computer broke, and I realized how addicted I was to my technology. Even though I'm not a smartphone user, I'm very accustomed to being able to log into my email and use all my stuff on the computer all the time. And yeah, it's no EMF really. I mean, it's no RF type EMF the way we do it, but I'm still using it all the time. And intellectually and mentally, I'm kind of addicted to it, not so much physically. So in this case, it was my mind I had to get around the whole thing about not being able to log in. And I ended up with this feeling of weightlessness and just being a free-floating variable in the world. It was a very interesting feeling, more like I was in a dream, because I have a lot of dreams that I'm traveling.
4 days in a very harsh place. It was quite the thing. But we actually also did some work in the days leading up to it.
Yeah.
And you established a hypothesis well in advance of why. Once you were able to think, once we realized, oh my God, we're actually going to be doing this now. What is the reason for doing this? What do we hope to accomplish by neutralizing this area specifically?
Well, if you read my book, and even if you didn't, I'll tell you about it. I thought about 3 years ago after going through Phoenix, I thought about the impact of the monsoon on the desert and what a relief it brings in the summer. And how here in Southern California, we have a rainy season, which goes from November through April usually, with a tiny bit in May sometimes. Mm-hmm. Generally, June is mostly dry. July, August, and September are dry. October too, until the
mostly
dry. So I thought, Well, we only have rain once a year here, and then the summers are always dry. It's been like this my whole life. Although now the media is trying to pretend that that means we're in a drought, which when in actuality
It's not true.
it's always been this way in the summer. However, I thought, does it have to be this way? Is this actually natural? What made me start thinking about it was that every summer I would see these same cloud formations in Southern California. And I've been observing this since 2013, even before we started working with orgone energy. These are OR clouds every summer. OR clouds, very tropical, the types of clouds that form on the edges of thunderstorms. And every summer also I notice with a reversal in the jet stream, which I learned subsequently after first noticing it, that that is a function of an OR shift in the atmosphere. Wilhelm Reich discovered this. So I thought, okay, we have a jet stream reversal. We're getting these kind of clouds in Southern California that look like they're on the edges of rainstorms. So that means there's rain nearby, but we're not getting it. Is it really natural that it would stop here while it rains in the deserts in the eastern mountains? Or is it perhaps being suppressed? So I started to think that we're experiencing rain suppression, and the more we've learned about how this all works, how the weather works, how energy impacts rain or lack of rain, we realized that if we were to neutralize a major DOR source that was between us and the monsoon, which is Phoenix, Arizona, was the place, that maybe we could bring that monsoon into California. Maybe, and I'm not saying we were controlling the weather. I'm saying that perhaps there was something blocking it, because I didn't see any reason why the deserts and mountains nearby should get it, but it should not reach a little farther.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I get a lot of emails, and I know you do too, of people who think that we're altering the weather. No, this is actually georestoration. The alteration has been done by the DORizing of the atmosphere and the landscape with these cell phone tower arrays. That's the alteration. We're just undoing that to allow what's natural to be able to come through once again. So again, the point of origin here is the DORizing, and what we do by creating this countergrid of OR is it allows those natural systems to come in. And this is important to look at the weather maps, because you could see what was going on there on the maps, the direction that these storm systems were coming in July and August versus how they come in December, January, February, which is from the northwest. 3 years ago, when we were up in the northwest, we could see quite plainly that there was massive weather control going on there in order to adversely impact the storms coming into California
In the winter.
From that direction.
Yeah.
But seeing this, it stands to reason that in this other time of year, what's going on down in Phoenix with all these cell tower arrays is clearly an attempt to reduce precipitation in the other time of year, July and August.
Yes, even before we went in depth in Phoenix, having just driven through it once, I could see that it had an exorbitant number of cell towers, way more than would be required for cell service, even from the freeway. And when we went there on the ground, we saw that was indeed true. So my hypothesis was that if we neutralize DOR sources by creating a countergrid with orgonite in the greater Phoenix area, that would counteract the rain suppression and DORizing of the atmosphere for hundreds of miles around. This is also based in part on Wilhelm Reich's experiments in Tucson, or outside of Tucson, Arizona in the 50s, where he impacted weather all the way in Pasadena and LA. So having seen a little bit of evidence that there's monsoon activity in Southern California that kind of reaches close to LA, but not quite, I thought, well, occasionally we do get a rain shower in July or August, so why is this not the regular thing? When we were in Phoenix, we saw that that was actually true. The amount of cell towers there was absolutely off the charts, and I don't necessarily think this dry season is natural in Southern California, because in Arizona they have a biannual rain season.
Yeah, that was actually very interesting. One of our rest stops along Interstate 8 going into Phoenix featured all of these placards about the wildlife and the flora and fauna and the landscape and whatnot. And I was reading over one of them just for a moment, because it's very difficult to be out in 100+ degree weather for any length of time, but I was just glancing over this little board that they had set up at this rest area, and it mentioned specifically the term biannual it was in reference to their rainy season in Arizona. And we're so close to Arizona geographically. So again, it just doesn't make sense that California wouldn't have the same thing that Arizona would.
Especially because California is a rainier place than Arizona. It's less desertified. So it just didn't add up. And ultimately, the reason that I wanted to achieve this increase of rain here, and not just California, but for Arizona and New Mexico as well, is to reduce wildfires. Because the problem we're dealing with now is it's desert development, drought, DOR, and as a result, wildfires. Now, I'm using the word drought loosely because they're trying to say that all of a sudden we're in a drought in California when we weren't a year ago or 2 years ago. The whole world is constantly in a state of drought, actually, because it's supposed to be rainier everywhere than it is. So when I'm using the word drought, I'm not using it like the media to say we didn't get enough rain this year in California. I'm just using it generally to say the whole world should be getting more rain than it is.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that too, because drought is a word that is very much misused. I mean, you can expect that the media would do something like that.
They use it to say we're out of drinking water, when we're not.
Right. Well, drought in its proper usage means when there's a state or condition where you're supposed to be getting rain, it's normal to be getting rain, but there isn't any. Drought is not what happens every year in Southern California between May and October. That's the dry season.
But I'm saying it doesn't have to be that way.
Yes.
So we might be able to fight all this drought mind programming as well.
I'm just trying to establish the proper sense of that word.
Yeah, so when we're using it, that's what I mean. So the problem we're dealing with here is drought, DOR, and wildfires. Wildfires are a huge problem. We had one very near our house the other day. It was very scary because we were out, and when we drove back, I saw the smoke, and it was very close to home, and I thought it might actually be where we live. Turns out it was a few miles away, thankfully, and not a place where there were any houses. So that was very fortunate, but it did kind of jar me awake and make me understand how important it is that we keep the rain coming year-round in California. Actually, a couple of years ago in 2019, California had the mildest wildfire season in 20 years because we had a historic winter in 2018 to 2019, which was the culmination of 5 years of orgonite gifting in the Western US. So everything here was greener and wetter, and the fires couldn't spread like they normally did. But then all of a sudden in 2020, we had a terrible wildfire season, like just one of the worst ever, just huge record amounts of acreage burned. So we understood that, we do need to do something about this. However, unfortunately, 2020 was not a year that we could gift for a lot of reasons, some of which you've seen on this channel. 2020 was, for everybody, a very difficult year and a year of upheaval. But now we're back to work again.
Yeah, that was the first year since we started gifting in 2014 that we just were not able to do so. So the winter of 2020 to 2021, it's a miracle that there was any rain.
Well, and also because of the negativity of the people.
That's what I mean.
And because of COVID, which to the general public is known as COVID, people they were so negative and so fearful over this disease. And then people like us who know better were fearful over government oppression. There was people were afraid of all kinds of things in 2020. So,
well, there was just so much fear going around, and because people were inside their homes and not leaving and not doing all the things that they were normally doing, they were constantly being bombarded by all this negative media to boot, and way more than even normal. So because of all of these factors, that absolutely affected what was going on in the atmosphere. People have no idea just how much influence they have over their own conditions around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really affect the environment with our minds, and we hadn't been able to gift in 2020. We're back to it again in 2021. We're doing a lot now, but we weren't able to, and then people were generating all this negativity. So it's a miracle rain fell at all. And actually, it wasn't that bad of a winter. We had a lot of snow, a lot of rain. It's being downplayed tremendously, and reservoirs are being drained. but it wasn't that bad. Maybe it wasn't as good as we would have liked, but I wouldn't go as far as to call that drought. But I would say that, yes, the world is generally droughty and needs help and more rain. So one of the things that we have learned through all this is, yes, the mind does affect the atmosphere. And Wilhelm Reich taught us that in order to combat the outer desert of our world, we also have to heal the inner emotional desert of our hearts. We need to heal ourselves and heal our world. We can't live in fear. Fear is the enemy of rain.
Yes. This is the whole reason that we did this gifting is to end the dry season and fire preferably end fire season in California, or at least reduce it as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that was the main goal here in doing this.
And since I just wanted to mention the definition of monsoon is a seasonal reversing wind accompanied by corresponding changes in precipitation. So we've seen this every year. We've seen this monsoonal change in the atmosphere every year. And so we set out to see what we could do about bringing that into California. Wilhelm Reich discovered that in a high OR atmosphere, a jet stream reversal may take place, and monsoons are actually the result of energetic shifts from DOR to OR in the atmosphere. So we went ahead on this mission without telling anybody we were doing it. And in the days preceding it, we were already working. And, it was interesting. There were already weather changes in the days leading up to it from things we were doing here.
Yes.
We started out 5 days before leaving. So we left on June 20th. But starting on June 15th, we started to connect with the desert and the monsoon energetically.
Yeah, we did this with our chembuster by aiming it a completely different direction that we'd never tried before. Usually we have it aimed to the west or the northwest and, varying directions in between those. But this time we aimed it due east, directly at the Sonoran Desert of Arizona. And we did this in order to connect with the energy out there just a few days leading up to it and just try and build something up.
And while that was happening, we kept looking at the radar, and we could see that there was monsoonal activity over Arizona and New Mexico. So there was already stuff happening out there pretty early in the year, and we just started connecting with that. And then that was actually a hot day. This is when it started getting hot, because right before this project, it got really, really hot from the tropical air coming up. On the next day, June 16th, it was hot already in the morning, and there was already OR transmutation in the cloud cover, but then this flattened out again. So we were having this kind of push and pull, and it was very humid, though. So
yeah, that's the other big difference. It's typically very dry where we live.
Yeah.
So to have suddenly the humidity added on top of that, it also makes it feel hotter than it is. And of course, the news takes advantage of that to pretend that it's anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees hotter than it actually is. So again, we had a lot of different factors here that we're trying to work with, but we pointed the chembuster straight up at one point, and that brought a whole different series of changes locally.
And we also added another device to it, which was given to us by an Australian friend. He made a monsoon coil, which is tensor ring technology. And it's this kind of elaborate coil that you put underneath the chembuster, and it's powered by a 9-volt battery. So we put that under there too, and we saw a lot of energized clouds in the atmosphere. I know this monsoon coil is doing something because we've been experimenting with it, and it's hard to say what's that and what's the gifting, but I could say that since we hadn't gifted yet, I could see that it was really energizing the sky. So that was nice to get a confirmation that it was working. There was significant monsoonal activity in Arizona that day, especially around Flagstaff. And the next day, June 17th, that's when the rain arrived in Southern California. So even before going and gifting Phoenix, just by connecting with the monsoon, with our own energy and with the energy of our chembuster and devices, we were already seeing this change.
Yeah, the big rains came that night, right at the stroke of midnight, in fact. But first, during the day, we had rains coming up through Orange County and into Los Angeles County, and they were moving northward, these coming from the south or south-southeast into the Tejon Pass near where we live. and the media was absolutely flabbergasted.
Yeah, they
by
did
it.
not know what to do with this. If you go back on my blog, I'm going to put a link to my blog in the description. You can go back and check some of the things that the news was saying about it. But yeah, they were really confused by it, which is fine. We expect that. At least they reported on it. There was also significant monsoonal activity in Arizona near Flagstaff and in the eastern deserts of California, east of Victorville.
It was really important to this mission to keep an eye on the weather maps while all this was happening, because this is how we substantiate these changes with what we're doing.
Right. And yeah, the weather changes and looking at the radar, because we can't see everywhere what's going on.
Right.
And it was hot and humid that day, and we had an absolutely beautiful sunset. And yes, that was the night of the midnight rain shower. We were in bed, and all of a sudden we heard something like, what is that? Well, it was rain right here.
I thought it was mice running on the deck.
I was scared. I thought there was like...
I was just really freaked out. It was a plague of rodents appearing out of nowhere. But no, it was the sound of rain, and we saw the lightning strikes in the distance to the northeast, and we heard the thunder. It certainly cooled it down a lot.
Yeah, the air cooled down with the rains, and there were thunderstorms in Central California too. In the next morning, June 18th, in the news, there were thunderstorms in Central California and monsoons continuing in Arizona, especially around Flagstaff and Kingman. So it was kind of expanding by then. The next day, June 19th, which was the day right before we left, it was hot and dry. There were OR clouds, and there were still some monsoons going on in Arizona in the mountain areas.
So we left the chembuster pointed eastward while we drove off into the desert. And so we began on that Sunday, the 20th. And, no planes at all day. From Fraser Park to, we stopped in Yuma for the night. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing there. And I was looking, too. I was looking for towers, too, because I was tossing most of the way. But there was nothing that I could see. Mm-hmm. No planes. I don't mean no trails. I mean no planes.
Yeah, there's been almost no air traffic up there, especially on these high OR days. This is more evidence that this is not planes as we know it, but some other kind of technology going on up there. I don't see any evidence that chemtrails are being done by humans, nor that they are anything to be concerned about. They're just the visual evidence that someone's coming through, and no one was coming through. We saw no planes and no trails at all on June 20th.
So we gifted the one side of the Salton Sea in 2015. We gifted the other side this time. So again, it's establishing that counter grid. Mm-hmm. There were towers here and there, but sometimes you want to just have, if you look at a map, have a nice little line of OR generators going. And we went all the way down to El Centro, which we had also previously gifted in that year, 2015. And then we took Interstate 8 down along the border all the way into Yuma. And it was hot.
Very hot.
The Prius thermometer registered 117, which, again, you have to take with a grain of salt because it's measuring radiant heat from the asphalt beneath it. So, of course, it's going to be a lot higher than what it actually is. But it was hot. And frankly, anything over 85 pretty much sucks. So what's the difference really between 90 and 105?
Well, I've gotten to the point where 90 is very tolerable to me, but that's from all this desert gifting.
Right.
I'm kind of used to it, but I would say that once you're in the upper 90s, it's all the same. I mean, there's no way to know. That day, there were thick DOR clouds in shades of brown and gray to the east as we were approaching Yuma. And the land was very desertified with sand dunes.
Yes.
And Wilhelm Reich had called this area the Sahara of North America. In the news that night, and we were watching TV news because we could not use our computer. We couldn't log on to anything and let the parasites know what we were doing. So we watched TV news to get our weather reporting, and they reported a 10% chance of rain for Tuesday and a 20% chance for Wednesday, which were the days we would be in Phoenix. And they also called the DOR clouds overcast that day, which was kind of a weird way to put it because it was actually very sunny. So I guess that's the only thing they would be able to call it.
Right. And it was still sunny the next day when we left. It was still hot, too. The thermometer said 100 in the morning, and by the time we got into Phoenix, it was about 112. So we just gifted from Yuma all the way into Phoenix.
Yeah, we went a different way. We could have taken the 10 to Phoenix, but we've done that. So we took the 8, which we hadn't taken before, and we were able to cover a lot more ground out in the desert. Get a lot of TBs out there.
And as soon as we got into Phoenix, it hit us. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in any gifting prior. It was a wall of DOR, and it hit us, and we just had this intense feeling of anxiety, malaise. Our phone is off and wrapped, by the way, so it's not anything that we were doing in our own personal space.
No, and they weren't really attacking us because they didn't know we were there, because we get etherically attacked too when we're gifting, because they know where we are, because they know where all our hotel reservations and Airbnbs are, and they could follow us, but no, they had no awareness of us there. It was just the DOR of Phoenix, the sheer number of towers.
Oh, yeah.
It was just astronomical.
And I mentioned what the freeways were like a couple years prior. This time we had a chance to see what the roads were like, and the roads were not much better.
We were.
No, not we were on the West End. Everything was very manicured and landscaped. There were these huge defoliated expanses. There were these little tiny bushes placed at intervals with no bottoms.
But there was also a lot of dead ends at that part of Phoenix, so we had to go to a different part of the city and just kind of leave that behind, and we had to just stop and regroup because it was just too frustrating. And
we almost threw in the towel.
Well, that wasn't
crazy.
Real, though. That wasn't real. That was just...
It was bad. It was bad. The point is, it was really bad, but we sat for a moment, we regrouped, and...
We got out the map again, just looked in more detail. Let's go to a different part of the city.
Yeah. Somewhere
a little more normal, because this part had a lot of cul-de-sacs and, like gated communities and stuff. So we figured it out.
It was clear that this was numero uno in terms of the amount of DOR sources and just we would literally see 3 at every corner.
It was crazy. I think it surpassed Las Vegas. It's hard to say. Las Vegas was crazy with the DOR. I had Portland, Oregon, too. But I would say this might have been the most because it was just an absolutely overwhelming number of towers.
But strangely, no planes. Still no planes.
Still no planes all day. So we did a big piece of Phoenix that day. We're doing the wide sweeping gestures because Phoenix is too big for us to do every single street in one gifting trip. So we wanted to cover the most ground possible. So we did a very big wide sweep north and east, and that covered us for the day and actually did improve the energy because the next morning, June 22nd, there were already OR clouds in the morning, and we saw our first planes that day, and they all had transmuting trails, like they were trying to get out quick. That was a day that started out with better energy. We felt better. We weren't agitated anymore, and we gifted all day, morning till dark.
We just went straight into it without we stopped for lunch, but we gifted for 8 hours at least that day, just nonstop, marking the map as we went, because this was all, like you said, about just wide sweeping gestures, just to create a counter grid. And if you miss something, it's no big deal. It's impossible to get every tower when you have 3 at every corner. So you move on to the next one, and
we barely missed anything though, because down on the ground it was really easy to get to them. I know that we have a gifting 101 that explains some of the things about gifting, how to be efficient and safe. I will add to that here's the old person's method of gifting, because when we started doing this, we were younger and a little more bold. Like we'd be at a stoplight and I would run out of the car through lanes of traffic to go throw it in a bush and come back. I don't do that anymore, especially ever since, we've had numerous run-ins and issues with people along the way, and we want to stay off the radar.
Yeah.
So what we do is
don't want to attract any attention doing this.
So now we don't attract attention anymore, and so here's the mature way of gifting. If you don't feel comfortable,
the sophisticated way
is this way you also avoid people coming out and saying, "What are you doing here?" That could happen too. So you just go into a parking lot with a supermarket, a Starbucks, normal stuff like that's nearest to the tower, and you park like you're going shopping, and you just gently place it into a bush very discreetly, and you move along your way, and then nobody thinks about you then. If you're on somebody's in somebody's parking lot behind their business and it's a small business, they might come up to you, which they have before, and said, "What are you doing here?" You know,
Or if you're just out on the street.
you can get a cop's attention doing that. You don't want that, so there's ways around that.
And Phoenix is a very, very big, expansive city.
And we didn't just do Phoenix either.
Yeah, there's lots of little places within Phoenix. There's Mesa, Tempe, Glendale.
Tempe, like the food?
Yes, Tempe, pardon me. we ate tempeh.
I ate tofu myself.
And Scottsdale. There are all these little towns in there, and we gifted them all.
Well, yeah, we did make very big, long trips across the whole metro area, up and down. We basically did a cross through it, like up and down and down the middle too.
And very rarely did we gift one tower buster for one tower. There were 2 or 3 together most times, sometimes more than 3.
Yeah, and as the day went, we saw dramatic changes in the atmosphere. I predicted that it would start raining somewhere between a little before sunset and the wee hours of the morning. And the sky was just getting more and more energized. And I knew it was going to rain, even if just like an OR splatter, which kind of happens before the real rain. And the first drops they start falling around 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So
about an hour before
we were successful in getting the energy unstuck and getting the rain going.
Well, it was enough rain for the news to report on it. So we just gifted until we didn't have any more light to see.
Mm-hmm. And that was a very, very tiring day, very long day. And we knew that we were going to do some more on the next day on the way out. So that's what we did. We called it quits when we couldn't see anymore. And then the next morning, we woke up and the ground was wet. It had rained overnight. And the news on Good Morning Arizona, and still we're watching TV, although we finally did log into our emails and stuff that night because it was our last
at the very
full
end.
day.
Yeah.
So we finally broke down and did it on June 22nd. The last day was June 23rd. By then they knew we were in Phoenix, but we were leaving. And the news on Good Morning Arizona reported that, and I quote, "Believe it or not," unquote, "Phoenix will only reach 100 degrees today," which was actually a huge reduction from what it was previously. Although I think that all these numbers are inflated. We're looking at it at like a 12-degree reduction.
Right.
And they said tomorrow, and again I quote, "we'll start to dry things out again," unquote. They said, "we'll start to dry things out again." I wonder what they meant by that. You know, what I think they meant was these weather control arrays are just exactly what we think they are. These are arrays set up over strategic areas to control the weather. The weather is not being controlled by planes spraying chemtrails. That is complete like speculation with no grounding. I'm not saying that there's not things up there with white lines behind them, but that's not the cause of the weather control. The weather control is from the ground up. And that's what happened. We took down that grid in Phoenix. Not entirely. We still have more work to do. But we knocked it out. But they thought they would start to dry things out again. However, when we left, it was raining. And it continued raining steadily through the morning as we drove south through Scottsdale, and we were continuing to gift on our way to the 10.
And the rain there was a correlation. The rain would get harder and the temperature would drop. The rain would get even harder still, the temperature would drop even more. Eventually, it got down to 73 degrees.
And, you know, even though we can't say that the Prius thermometer is accurate, I can say that does, even if the temperatures are not right, it does present a pretty big drop.
Yes.
So it was about 30 degrees from the day before at that same time of day. So whether or not it was exactly 103 down to 73, we do know it was a huge drop.
Yes, it certainly was.
And it was amazing. It was beautiful there in the rain because it is a beautifully landscaped city, actually. There are nice plants everywhere, very green, water features. No indication of a water shortage there, although here in California, everything's dry and drained.
Which is obviously due to mismanagement, intentional mismanagement.
Yeah, they didn't seem to have a problem with that.
Please consult our previous video for more information on that.
But to see the rain falling on all that beautiful vegetation, I could just see a changing environment. I could see that Phoenix could be different.
Certainly. So we gifted because we couldn't gift along Interstate 10, we took a road that paralleled Interstate 10, and we gifted on our way out of Phoenix. We just took this road out, and it took a long time.
All the way to Jackrabbit Road.
Yeah.
All the way to the end.
So around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the rain stopped, and the sky started to clear. We could see the white OR clouds and a very deep, pristine blue sky behind it. So we drove west, and I had this feeling that once we could gift on the 10, once the concrete was gone, once we were out of Phoenix city limits, it just occurred to me that it would be a good idea just to do a maintenance gifting along Interstate 10, going into Palm Springs. It's a pretty long distance, and I just felt that the grid has to be maintained. I mean, you can't just expect to remain forever. So we went westward on the 10, and the cloud cover was increasing, and in the late afternoon, it started to rain. And the rain turned into a downpour once we got into California. I'd say about 15 or so miles west of Blythe. We got just one of these, for just a few minutes, just one of these desert downpours, just absolutely torrential. It was so thick, we had a hard time seeing out the window. We had a hard time driving through it because the water was just spilling all over the freeway. And we could see, I looked out and I saw a wash that was just, it was gushing like the LA River in the middle of a storm. It was just this brown, this unstoppable torrent of water. It was truly something. And then it stopped for a little bit, and it started again around Desert Center. We got another one of these just unbelievable downpours. It was the biggest I had ever seen in my life.
Yeah, those rains out there were unbelievable. Torrential, absolutely torrential. We had seen one similarly heavy up in Oregon at night while we were towerbusting the coast, because that also is a major weather control array up there to prevent water from coming into California. It all seems to be to prevent water from coming to California. What is it that's so special about California that they have to suppress all the rain?
Well, whatever it is, we were determined to undo it, and we could see by it was such an extreme, vivid example when we would get these downpours. Wow, we really are just it was a release. I mean, we could tell that early on. It's not going to be like this all the time in Southern California, but this is just a release of the blockage. And Wilhelm Reich said that when something like this happens, there can be potentially destructive weather events that happen, and that's an unfortunate side effect of this. But it doesn't continue that way forever. It's just when the blockage is released, you get this extreme rush, and then things just kind of stabilize and balance out a little bit.
Well, he also said not to do too much cloud busting at once. He did it differently than us. He had a cloud buster, which would move orgone energy streams in the atmosphere. Our way of doing it is different because it's within our means to do this. And it's also safer. To do gifting is safer. And you can also make sure that it doesn't end up being catastrophic, although it can sometimes. But he would say don't do too much cloud busting at once. And likewise, with gifting on the scale we did, it was already a lot. So it's good that we didn't do more, because I wanted to do more. We gifted about 300 TBs on this trip, and we neutralized way more than that many towers because there were so many clusters. So hundreds of DOR sources neutralized. But I really wanted to do more. But ultimately, it's better that we didn't, because it's already having an unbelievable effect.
Oh, yeah.
Here in California, we have accomplished what we wanted to do. What we set out to do, the hypothesis proved correct.
When we got home on the night of the 23rd, we looked at the radar maps again, and we saw the news reports, and we could see that the rain was coming through the desert there in eastern California and all over Arizona. I mean, it was just all over the place. Finally, rain to help put out the wildfires there. There were a number of them. Yeah, 5 or 6 wildfires, different ones in central Arizona burning, and we could see on the map that they were all just getting doused in rain.
I will add here that you can't take the news too seriously on these things, because even if it's really, really good and things are getting better, they're going to downplay it. Like, there was a report that I saw from Arizona News back when we got home about the rain putting out a wildfire, and there was a firefighter talking about it, how, well, yeah, it's kind of helping, but it's really, there's now a threat of flooding and lightning and just other stuff. And she's saying, oh, it's not going to really help. There'll be lightning and it'll start more fires. And she's standing there getting completely drenched in the rain while she's saying that, and maybe it helps a little, but not really. So they're always going to downplay. And even the rain in the forecast for Tuesday and Wednesday, which is now this week, Tuesday and Wednesday, we had a tremendous amount of rain today, but the news, after reporting the rain, all of a sudden took it off the forecast completely. So you can't really trust them, because they may give a little hint to it here and there, but then they'll report it completely wrong because they don't want it to be a certain way. It's almost like wishful thinking. So they took away the chance of rain completely from the forecast for today. We had a chance of rain for today. They took it off completely. Sure enough, we have a torrential downpour this afternoon. It is reaching into California now. We're getting the rain.
Yeah, 5 days after we get back from this thing. So when we did get back, we noticed that the heat wave was broken. We had temperatures back in the high 70s. The sky was pristine. We saw one or two planes, maybe. There were no trails. The sky was a deep blue, couple of puffy white clouds.
Then it got really, really hot again, right before this downpour that happened today. So we're definitely seeing some changes going on.
And by the way, today what we did was we, again, turned the chembuster straight up, put the monsoon coil underneath it, and oh man, did it just, and wind too.
And yeah, so
it wasn't just rain, it was wind. Whatever fire was going on down on the Grapevine is definitely out.
It has to be out now. I mean, I didn't see any smoke yesterday anymore, and we did see a lot of smoke the day before, but this was a big rain for our mountain, and our mountain typically does not get much rain in the summer at all. I mean, Big Bear, areas like that, they get the monsoonal moisture, the eastern mountains. The Sierras get the monsoonal moisture even. But we typically don't. So this is a big change for us here. And let's just hope it continues. I mean, that was the whole purpose here.
Oh, it's huge.
Wildfire season is a terrible problem in California. It gets worse every year. They're just burning up so many acres. And we don't really know what's causing the fires. But I know it's parasitic. And it's got to stop. And the fire departments are not putting them out. Just containing a fire is not good enough. Well, so we need to bring the rain to just extinguish them.
And what we do know at this point is that there's no reason that every single intersection in Phoenix needs 3 cell phone towers.
Yeah, and
these are clearly set up for weather control, specifically rain suppression in California.
Yeah,
due to the positioning of it.
And there was a lot of tiny ones in between, by the way. It was that piddly 5G stuff, which is all about mind control, not weather control. That's a short range. That's a short-range device that's designed to screw up the people in their houses, but it's not weather control in the same way. Although I'm sure it has an impact on it. DOR is DOR, but the ones we were really attacking were the big towers, and when you get them, all that piddly 5G stuff is near them, so you're going to neutralize them too.
And it was a large attack, and it was a fast attack. Doing this kind of gifting in late June, it just gave the parasites no time to react.
No, they didn't expect it. They didn't know we were going to be there. We hit them hard. I mean, we clobbered them.
So expect a different kind of summer this year than you've seen in years past.
Yeah.
At least in California.
Well, thanks for listening to our report on Project Monsoon. We really appreciate your support. Very, very excited about these great results. If you want to share with us any cool stuff that's been going on with your weather, please let us know. Comments are open, and feel free to email us anytime. You can visit our website, thekembo.com, and if you'd like to make a donation to support our work, we appreciate it. And we also have Orgonite and my book for sale, so that helps us as well. The other thing you can do to help is just make orgonite. We have a video on how to make your own orgonite, and we hope that everybody tower busts their own city, because that's the easiest way to do it, and you'll see so many great results. every single city across the country is a weather control array that needs to be taken out. And then we'll all have
Absolutely.
more favorable weather, less drought, less deluge, just more even normal weather. So thanks so much for all your support. And we'll be back again really soon. Go really slow here. This is why we didn't get more towers than we did, seriously, because this is what can happen when you do a very, very sudden shift, a very sudden energy flux. We'll get through it. It happened in Oregon, too. Whoa. Uh-oh, this is crazy. Flooding up.
Free car wash.
This moment outside of the ABC 15 studios, we actually have more that's developing to our south, and I think that could bring a few raindrops again our way. So we'll take again what we can get, maybe even a little bit more measurable rain at the airport. You'll notice that the focus for rain is essentially through central Phoenix and the West Valley too. The intensity picking up on some of these showers as well, especially just south of the Durango curve, and those showers essentially pushing to the north. The airport just east of there. So we'll see again if we manage to pick any up in that rain gauge here this morning. So far, 1/100th of an inch of rain at the airport. That's it, but measurable rainfall regardless. These showers lifting to the north, no lightning within them at this point, but we'll watch for that as we go through the next several hours. Also, Queen Creek, you're getting some of that new rain moving in too. Today, that chance for showers and thunderstorms expands across our state. I'll break down that hour-by-hour forecast for you in just a few minutes, Allison.
Okay, Iris, thank you, and it's good to see you and have
that sex status. So they're ready to go at a moment's notice. The gentleman we talked to, Mark Houston, just was talking about the clear skies. Photographer ones are those that are giving you a look at the skies right now. We're not seeing smoke. What we're seeing is cloud coverage, and so a lot of the people we spoke to say that's a relief. They're hoping for no more dry lightning because unfortunately that's what started the fire. But they're hoping that the rain will help all of these firefighters out there battling this wildfire and maybe give them just a little bit of relief. And so we're seeing just a few raindrops. It's cloudy, it's cool, and really, really hoping that this is going to help the firefighters out and that these people can stay inside their homes.
Even if it's only for a couple of days, right?
Absolutely.
It'll allow them to get some new fire line down and save these communities. I need to thank